Hello and welcome back to this lesson series. Today we're going to start looking at Nessun Dorma in depth. So this aria is a very famous aria. A lot of people who don't even know opera will know this aria because of its popularity. And this is an aria in Act 3 in Puccini's opera Turandot, where the prince Calaf, his name is Calaf, but we don't know his name yet at this point in the opera, is singing about his victory because he says, tomorrow morning I'm going to win. So all'alba vincerò, which is when the singer sings the very famous high B in this aria, it says, at the dawn of the day I will win. So this is full of confidence from the tenor, and Puccini actually writes very fantastic orchestration for this aria. So today we're going to look at the first section and try to compare it with the full score, the full opera orchestra score, and see what is different in the reduction and what needs to be changed, what we need to keep, and so on. So here we're looking at the full opera score, and as you can see, it's a pretty standard orchestration with obviously the strings, the woodwinds, the brass, and what we have here is something special, which is A, which stands for arpa, which is the harp, the instrument harp. And we can see that these chords are something that stands out in the opera score. So if you remember the last time, we talked about arpeggiation in opera reductions, and we have this example in another Puccini opera, where the chord is too big and pianists will have to spread, but we shouldn't spread because the orchestra actually plays that chord together. But in this case, it's different. If there is one time where we need to play arpeggiation, it's because the harp is actually playing. And this is exactly how it will sound like in the orchestra when the harp plays, right? In this chord that we have here. So let's look at the reduction. Here I've written out, if you can see, the reduction actually is not exactly helpful to us to know what instruments play what, because as I've circled in the full score, the harp actually plays at these moments. Here, but we don't know that because the reduction doesn't tell us that. In fact, it actually looks the same as that chord, right? Which the harp doesn't play. So in those chords, we shouldn't actually spread. We should just play a chord like that. And then in the harp chords, we'll play this way. Now, this also leads us to big chords here. If you see the very opening in this chord, we have what the transcriber has asked us to play, which is a grace note, and then the chord on the left hand. This way, because, to create the richer kind of sound for a richer tone. But on the other hand, we have to spread the notes because it's just too far away for one hand. But we know that in the orchestra, they don't start the chord this way. If we look back at the full score, we can see that all these instruments are actually playing together when they start. So there is no reason for us to start this piece by playing a grace note. So we should solve this problem the same way as how we talked about arpeggiations the last time. So my solution is to play the bottom two notes with the left hand, and then the right hand takes that note because the right hand is actually free this time. So you can play the whole chord together and it sounds fantastic. Now this chord on the right hand, some people might not have this span of a ninth. So one solution that pianists will think of is to do that, but we have established that only the chords later on are spreaded. And this chord is actually played together in the orchestra. So you could just bring the C up to here and play it this way. It doesn't actually change too much of the sonority. So again, we are trying to make things work for our own hands. Personally, I can actually still reach the ninth, so I'll play this way. And then after that, I can spread the chord. So when we have big chords like this, there are two things that we can do. As I said, we can spread it and risk making it sound like a piano piece, or rewrite the chord, as I said, bringing the C up, but changing the voicing of the piece. So essentially, one of which choices that you choose will have its pro and con, right? So essentially, we are choosing which sin to commit. For me, I always try to keep it as orchestral as possible. So when the chord is played together, I try to not spread it and play the chords together as how it should sound like. Now the next thing that we find on this opera reduction are these chords marked staccato, and it says here as well staccate. Without knowing what I've written, which is pizz, we wouldn't know what those chords are. So especially for this kind of situation, we need to figure out what those staccato chords are in the strings, because they can be bowed but staccato, but they can be pizzicato, which is plucked, and both will have very different sound, obviously. So we need to check the full score, and we can see that here is actually marked pizz. So the strings are actually plucked, and here arco back, and then we have another pizz. So we know that these chords are pizzicato. So what do we do when we have pizzicato chords? We need to keep it as light as possible and detached. Not too short, we don't have to play it so short, because when the strings do a plucking pizzicato, there still will be a little bit of resonance. So we can actually do something like, so let the sound ring a little bit. And one thing that makes pizzicato really stands out and sounding like pizzicato is when you have something else in the orchestra that is sustained. So in this case, the right hand chord is sustained, and then the left hand has a pizz. So that will make it sound really like a pizzicato. Same goes to a very famous aria from The Marriage of Figaro, where the orchestra, the strings are playing pizz, and then the right hand has the woodwinds playing the tune. So, putting it all together, we'll find that we play all these chords this way. And in fact, for these chords here as well, you see I marked an X here. This is just my way of marking so that I double the octave on the bottom, this and this. So we can always add that just to create more sonority. So we end up with this. Woodwind plays together. And then now you have the harp. And here, pizz. Another harp. And another harp chord here. And then here the full chord. Okay, so the next time we'll pick up from here and look at some other things that happens in playing this orchestrally. Okay, so I'll see you next time.